Welcome everyone to 121. I am Peter, and joining me on this movie discussion day is Matt.
Hey, what's up?
This is where we're going to talk about Black Widow, the newest entry into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and it has been quite some time since the last movie in this universe. Obviously, there's been some Disney Plus shows, the last season of
Mhm.
Agents of Shield, which may or may not count these days, but regardless, it was all TV stuff, and now we're back with a Marvel movie. The last one, of course, being Spider-Man: Far From Home in July of 2019. It's been that long.
Yeah, it's 2020, year of many things, but most notably, no Marvel film.
A Marvel,
Nothing else happened.
which I have to be honest, might have been a welcome break in many ways.
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes you need absence to make the heart grow fonder. Uh,
Because I said this during the break when we had no movie, because originally we had
mhm.
like they were having a quiet year's plan because the planned year was only meant to be Black Widow and I think Eternals, and that was a quiet because they're up to three movies a year, so only doing
Mhm.
two. Well, that was quiet. They're only doing two this year.
Yeah,
Obviously, everything being pushed back means that now there's like a backlog of
boom,
movies, and it's actually
boom.
going to be quicker
Yeah.
than it wasn't originally. But I said that maybe a little bit of time off will make everyone kind of miss them a little bit, and maybe they'll
Mhm.
do better with these relatively smaller films when they come back because it's not Avengers again. It's Black Widow followed by some characters who are kind of new to the general
Yeah.
audience. Hell, they're new to
It,
me, so
yeah, well, yeah, I mean, you have like Shang-Chi or Shang-Chi, however we're saying it. The Eternals, I know next to nothing about.
oh nothing.
So,
Yeah,
but Shang-Chi is pretty okay, but it does feel like a refresh from we've had
they
sequels upon sequels.
obviously they're going to refer to events in the universe, but they do kind of
Hmm.
feel like Phase One movies again in a lot of ways. There's a lot of
Yep.
Phase One feel to some of the stuff coming out. Obviously, Black
Yeah.
Widow's different to that. Black Widow is kind of
It-
an odd duckling because it's this
yeah.
weird movie that even when they announced it, it was like, this is weird. You're announcing this after the. I mean, we're starting
Yeah.
spoiler free for this movie, but you know, general spoilers for the
uh,
MCU before this
Yeah.
movie, and it was kind of odd that they announced the first ever Black Widow solo movie right after she died in
Yeah.
Endgame. So there's a lot of weird sort of feelings get into this one, and then of course the fact that it got delayed a whole year, which just added extra, I don't know, pressure onto it in a lot of ways to be this
Yeah. A
first
year
return.
plus because it was meant to come out in May of 2020.
Yeah, that first weekend of May,
Yeah,
like
the
usual. Yeah,
Marvel weekend, and so it's July, and yeah. Um, but
so
I mean, we've had the Disney Plus shows to hold us over a little bit. It's felt like they almost lucked into this being a sideways kind of story because it's not reliant. Nothing in this movie pushes anything forward.
well,
You know,
barring one thing for one of the shows coming up.
right, right, right. But that those are always kind of like that.
If
You
I
know what I
mean
mean?
if anything, I would suspect I would speculate the reason why Marvel and Feige gave in and agreed to do the Premier Access thing is because they knew they had to have this movie out before that show later this year,
Hmm.
whenever it's going to
Yeah,
hit. So I
yeah,
suspect that was in part just because Disney are like, we need to start releasing movies. It's been too long. We need to make money again. We've been
yeah,
sitting here with no profiting.
yeah. This is the third movie I've been to at the theater this year. And let me tell you, the idiot crowds are back. I did not miss that. Uh, First two this year were Kong versus Godzilla, which that was a cluster because that was oof. And then Fast Nine, which we saw a week late, and it was basically just me and my wife in the theater. And that's what I think heaven's like. Theater all to yourself, big loud cars wrecking into each other. Um, no, I had a very distracting guy who basically thought he was my best friend, and anything cool happened, he would look over at me like to see my reaction. It was very odd, and I was not expecting that. you know, um,
Did you make eye contact with him every
I
time?
did not.
Oh.
Uh, I kept my head forward and
Oh.
trying to take in as much as I can of the newest Marvel film.
Don't want to encourage him. He may actually think you're friends by the time you leave if you actually return the eye
And
contact.
had he introduced himself and went, "Hey," as I'm wearing the Black Widow shirt that I wore to see the film. Hey, cool shirt. I'm excited. How about you? There was none. Um, yeah.
He
So
was going for that unspoken romance
I guess I
that
get
just blossoms out of thin air.
yeah. So also proceeded to eat chicken strips with ranch and then used the leftover ranch and dipped his popcorn in it. I've never seen anything. It was as if you know what movie is it where they're when they replace people but they're not quite right? Is it Body
Yeah,
Snatchers?
Visit of the Body Snatchers, yeah.
Yeah, that they're just slightly off of what a regular human would do. This guy, I would have suspected having not known him. But yeah. Um, so as much as I was happy to be back in the theaters to see this, and the only reason I bring that up is you brought up the premiere access, which
Yes.
I was like, I'm not spending that. That's way too much.
And then spent
And
more at
then
theater.
yeah, then I saw what we spent at the theater and went, oh yeah, my home theater with the cheap movie tickets all day isn't open yet.
Mm.
Uh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I
So
didn't go to the theater largely just because I've only had one shot so
mm,
far.
okay, and you're
And
being responsible.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
and to be honest, the fact that they're dropping social distancing rules,
Mm-hmm.
uh, supposedly on quote unquote Freedom Day means that even once I've had my second shot, I might feel a little bit weird about going, at least at a busy
Yeah.
time. Like, I mean, I tend to try and go for the dead times anyway, just
Yeah. I
because
mean, it's
let's face it, I always like to avoid human contact when I went to the
yes.
movies, even before
You
there was a
know, Pete.
pandemic.
Before I used to like making fun of you for that.
Yes.
Now I understand it. I really do.
Yeah, it's
And that
quiet. It's
said,
nice.
seeing something like Endgame with a fully packed theater, that's a fantastic experience. But I don't need that every time. You know, sometimes I just need to sit there and take it in. Like one of my greatest movie going experiences when I saw The Raid, the first one. That one's not called Redemption, right? That's the second one.
No, the first one's Redemption.
Okay, that one, the first one. Complete theater all to myself before work one day, and it was fantastic, like a private screening room.
Yeah,
Um,
pleasant experience.
but
But to get
yeah.
on to Black Widow itself, uh, I could tell there's going to be some different opinions here, but we've had a
Mm-hmm.
taste of what each other thinks of the movie
Yep.
beforehand. I kind of went into this thinking the trailers were just kind of okay.
Mm-hmm.
I was expecting a middle of the road, kind of bland Marvel movie, and I would say that I got a middle of the road, kind of bland Marvel movie. So, I know you're more positive though. You
Mm-hmm.
were more into
Yeah.
it.
So I did, and I wouldn't call it bland because there's stuff in here that I do think really hit, at least for me, on an emotional level. But it's not the stuff that you would think. It's not the spy stuff. I actually kind of agree that the spy stuff is just kind of like, yeah, it's okay. Where the movie really works for me is the interpersonal stuff between all the characters, and coming off of Endgame, and even though this takes place before that, it really fits in well with what they're doing on the Disney Plus shows. So the fact like that theme, like this is almost like, these all these characters survived this huge war, right? And how does it affect them later? And for Black Widow, for Natasha, it's a little bit different, right? Because she doesn't. And spoilers, I guess we're okay for spoilers for Endgame, right?
Yeah, sure.
Um, However, her dealing with her past trauma of this family that she had before she was an Avenger, that stuff really resonated with me.
So I'll give you the positives. I think that Florence Pugh was pretty good, and I think her chemistry with Scarlett Johansson
Hmm.
was basically making up for a pretty lackluster script. But I do think their chemistry was there, which is good because she's the thing that's she's the only thing in this movie that really matters in the sense that she's going to be the thing that sticks
True.
around, and is going to be showing up in other things. So that's cool.
Hmm.
So I'll say that. I will say I thought the opening sort of prologue scene was kind of neat, and it actually felt like it was like a very stylized movie. Unfortunately, once we jumped ahead in time to the
Hmm.
quote unquote present day, it just kind of went into it's Marvel mode
Yeah.
now. It's just typical.
Present day of 2016, which I had to keep reminding myself.
Yes. So it's
Which,
slightly in the past. Yes.
yeah.
So uh, so I think it is slightly better directed, oddly, than a lot of the
Hmm.
Marvel movies. But I do think the script really fails at giving me much of a reason to care about a lot of the things that are in the movie. I will say that our track record with Marvel villains continues to be abysmal because I think Ray Winston, who is the villain of this movie, is terrible, and his Russian accent is
Uh,
something else. Because
I
Ray Winston's got a very specific voice, you know, he's got a very specific
yes.
growly English
Now,
accent.
here's my thing with that character. Not to go to spoilers. He doesn't necessarily have to be Russian. He could have been a defector, and we
Yeah,
could have
sure.
had that fun Ray Winston. Is it Winston or Winstone? How do we pronounce his last name?
Winston. It's just always been Winston when I've heard it.
Okay, we could have had that vibe, which he brought. Did you see Aronofsky's Noah? Did we
Yes.
review that back in the day?
I
He
can't
even have his accent in that movie. You know, so but yeah, like I hate to agree with you on that one, but Dreykov kind of is just there, and
I think the
I thought
problem
we were past that
the
with
problem with him
Marvel
as well is
villains.
that not only is he just there, like it's more literal than some of the other Marvel movies that have bad villains because he is pretty much off camera like the whole time
Yeah,
until there's a confrontation really towards
yeah,
the end. And that's kind of one of the problems I have with the script is that even the moment that Natasha and Yelena kind of decide, oh, this bad guy who's behind, our whole childhood and blah blah
mhm,
everything else, like that moment where they decide, I guess we're going to go after him. It kind of has that attitude that I just like said. I guess we'll go after him. Swig of
mhm,
beer. Let's just go do that. Like, there's nothing that really goes,
yeah.
oh, you have to do this now. This is important, and there's a reason why it's
When
motivating to happen now.
yeah, when we get to spoilers, there are other things like that things happen out of convenience
Yes.
that are lacking the motivation going, for these characters. Um, but yeah, no, Dreykov kind of sucked. I want to see more of the widows, right? Like it's set around the Red Room that's been fabled in all these other Marvel films.
What's
Um,
funny to me is that I don't really remember what they said about the Red Room in the previous because it's been a
mhm,
while, right? But
okay.
I still could tell it was being retconned just because of the way they talked about it. Where you know, Yelena brings up the Red Room or something at one point,
Mm-hmm.
and Natasha's like, "The Red Room, but that's finished. We destroyed that." It's
Yeah,
like you really believe that, and like even though I didn't remember what they said before, I'm like,
yeah,
that was a retcon. Like she just retconned that with
yeah,
saying you really
yeah.
believed it was over.
Well, Dreykov too. So I caught this on a YouTube video that came across my that Loki refers to Black Widow in the first Avengers um, with the phrase Dreykov's daughter, which I had always thought was
Ah.
something he was calling her. Well, they turn around and now I don't know if this is a retcon or if this is what they had, Whedon had seeded in because he wrote that first one, right?
Yes.
Yeah. If he had seeded this in later or whatever, but it was about an event that and Dreykov's daughter is someone else, not her. So I thought that was pretty clever. I just wish it had lived up
I would
to the tease.
I wouldn't say that was planned. I would say that the line probably works with the context of whoever Dreykov is in the comics. That it just felt like a
Hmm.
natural fit at the time, and they've expanded upon it by using that now when they were working on this.
Hmm.
I think the other big thing for me is that getting into this movie, like it kind of felt like an afterthought. It was like, oh, people want a Black Widow movie, we'll finally give it to them. Although it's
Hmm.
kind of like if this came out 5 years ago, if this came out 5 6 years ago in the right part of the timeline, I think it would have done a little bit better in
Hmm.
terms of, and not that it's not doing well financially on that. I just mean in terms of working for me. But I would say that it does kind of, like even the script to me and the story, it doesn't feel like this was a story that they were desperate to tell about Black Widow. It feels like we need to make a Black Widow movie. So, oh yeah, we'll make it about the Red Room because that's the obvious thing to make it about.
Right. But see, that's where I feel like it fits in with Phase 4 and the Disney Plus shows because there is a theme of people dealing with this darkness that they come from or that they experienced. And so for her to address that and her past and this family and Dreykov and reconnect with her sister, I think it fits in well with there. Again, I just wish the spy stuff was more captivating.
I can't, like, I get what you mean about fitting in with the theme, but I don't.
Hmm.
I never really get the feeling in this movie that Natasha is all that affected by it right now, and that's why she's going into it. Like, it's kind of what I talk about the
Hmm.
motivation and the
Yeah.
momentum to actually build to like taking down the Red Room now. Is
Hmm.
that it's not like when she finds out that it might still exist, it's this like earth-shattering moment where her world's
Hmm.
been pulled from under her feet, kind of thing. It's not like that. She's so kind of blasé about it. Like, it's almost like there's a much darker movie in here to be told, but because it has
Yeah.
to be the light-hearted Marvel movie, at the same time, it's kind of neutered in a lot of ways. And I get that because, I mean, and to be honest, some of the best things in the movie probably is the humor between some of
Yeah.
the main characters, so I can't really
Would
fault that
Yeah,
aspect
I
of it.
remember. I remember seeing the first trailer and seeing David Harbour just look like this grizzled, scary Russian guy, and then he makes a joke about him being fat, and I was like, "Oh, this kind of undercuts the tone." I was happy to see when finally watching the movie, the humor wasn't that overtaking, especially compared to some other Marvel films. Um, so I feel like they did pick their spots when it came to the comedy here, but it is a lot lighter. I mean, again, we'll talk about it when we get to spoilers. There's a thing that happens with Dreykov that the implications there are very, very, very dark.
Oh yeah, they're
Uh,
very on the nose.
you
Like
know,
what it's like speaking about in the real world is, I
yeah,
think, is I mean,
yeah,
we'll get to the spoilers, but I've got some thoughts on that. I think the other big thing as well, as part of, like, taking down the Red Room, is the idea of freeing all of the other widows in training and all the other widows who are active around the
right.
world. And I kind of felt like they didn't hammer that home enough.
No,
Where, like make it about saving all these people, make it about saving all these women who have effectively been enslaved with, like, mind controlling shit, and
right.
it kind of feels like an afterthought. And the
Well,
fact,
that's what I mean. That's where I would
yeah,
have loved to see more of the widows and how maybe some of them aren't under control. Maybe some of them like this and they're working for it. It's just the problem ones that have to be
it
controlled, and
it kind of
but we didn't get any of that. They're all cut from the same exact cloth. They're
it
all these
feels
kind of Terminators,
it feels like
you
this
know?
dipping its toes in about five different ideas, any one of which could
Yeah.
work and fuel the movie, but they don't actually
Yeah.
go far enough with any of them. So they all just kind of feel a little weak by it. But and it just
Mhm.
it ends up feeling a bit lackluster. The other more general complaint I'll make before we get to spoilers
Mhm.
is that the third act devolves into a giant set piece with lots of CG. It's like, really, why are we doing? Why did it have to turn into this?
Yeah. And he'll probably hear this somehow because he has ears everywhere on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Alden had seen this. He got to see in advance of it,
Mm-hmm.
right? And he had thoughts on it. And we were discussing his order of Marvel films. And I love the guy like a brother, but he had Winter Soldier down near the bottom. Now, again, taste being, notwithstanding and stuff. And I asked him why. I go, why do you have Black Widow so high and Winter Soldier so? He's like, well, Black Widow's kind of a better version of Winter Soldier. And let me tell you, if I was around him in person, I might have assaulted him.
Well, it's
Uh,
funny. It's funny you say that story because there was a few things in this movie where I had the thought this is just redoing parts of Winter Soldier but worse.
right?
That was what I thought at
I
multiple
had the
points.
same thing. And so going into this, I had that in the back of my mind because we had this conversation last weekend. And I was just like, okay, this is kind of almost like Natasha's version of Winter Soldier, down to certain story beats, but it's not executed nearly as well. And like I give Winter Soldier a lot of love, and I've watched it probably more than any other Marvel film, but there are glaring holes in parts of it. But it ultimately works, and parts for Black Widow for me just don't. You know, we haven't even talked about Taskmaster.
Yeah, well, I
Um,
mean, it's mostly spoiler stuff. I think we want to
yeah,
say
but
about
I'm just
that.
saying, like the first appearance, I thought was cool. Like they're doing the Bucky slasher villain thing, where I'm like, oh man, Taskmaster's like
Joe, the sad part is,
rad.
if they actually played into it where it was meant to be an evolution of what Winter Soldier was, it might have
Yeah,
fit next to it a little bit better. But they kind of
right.
never really addressed that, so it just kind of felt like they
Mm-mm.
were rehashing certain things. And
It
part of the problem is, even if it was technically done equally as good or even a little bit better, you still have the problem that it just feels like we're rehashing previous ideas and plot points. And even the
right.
fact that this movie, I won't say too much, but let's just say there's a lot of stuff falling out of the sky. Winter Soldier kind of also ended that way with the helicarriers. There was a lot of, like, structures
Kinda.
in the
That's how it
sky,
ends.
that, like,
Yeah,
there's a
like
lot of parallels that,
yeah,
and I don't really know, like, what the answer to this is, other than take more time to develop the ideas and
yeah.
don't pump out the script too quick and give it more thought.
That
But
said, I can't wait to watch this again. Uh, I couldn't say the same about some of the other companies' stuff. You know, sitting here watching this, I'm like, even at its most
I
bland,
mean, I can't agree with you. I have no interest in
yeah,
watching this again. I'm good.
yeah, we're different, Pete. But just watching some of the other solo movies over from DC and Warner's, I much rather watch this again for all its flaws. You know, uh, so yeah, man.
I'm not comparing. There's no point in comparing him. I have no interest in watching a movie this bland again.
Yeah.
There's one or two okay action sequences. Florence Pugh is very entertaining, has good chemistry with Scarlett, but for me, that's basically where the positives end. For the
Yeah.
most part, see rehashed things from other Marvel movies. It feels like because there's so many of them at this point, they're starting to reuse various things, and that wouldn't necessarily always be a bad thing. But I think nothing about this felt like it was putting either its own spin on it or anything else. There is, I do kind of like the way it draws parallels to a real world thing towards the
Mm-hmm.
end in a very specific instance,
Mm-hmm.
but unfortunately, I kind of like. I really thought they could have really sold the idea that this was about saving all of these innocent women who
Yeah.
were roped into this scheme. I also thought there was a really easy MacGuffin plot device with the. I'll just say the red
No.
smoke stuff.
Yeah.
Like it's set up right at the start, and it feels like such a like I thought, oh, maybe they'll use it bit by bit throughout the film, and it'll
Mm-hmm.
sort of like gradually build. Or no, it's just
It's a MacGuffin.
yeah, it's
It's
just
a
a MacGuffin.
suitcase. Yeah.
Yeah,
It passes between hands multiple times until you get to the third act, and then we see some resolution a little bit, but not a lot.
yeah.
But yeah.
It's it'd have been nice to just be care about one of those characters that was affecting. Maybe if
Mm-hmm.
someone we kind of cared about that we could sort of like
Yeah.
get behind in that moment. I also think I like the opening section I like, which is set in the
Mm-hmm.
80s, I think.
The Amblin film.
Yes.
Yeah.
That section I enjoyed. It was kind of a play on the Americans TV show. The idea
Mm-hmm.
you've got this fake family living in America and all that,
Yeah.
and that stuff I thought was pretty solid. But I don't necessarily think they landed the family stuff as a whole. Like this dysfunctional family can still function, like in like some of that, like there's one decent scene that's good because of the performances, with singing a song. That's all I'll say. You'll know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Mhm.
But I don't actually think that, like when they got to resolutions and they were making sort of speeches at the end about things and saying these like Hollywood style statements about what's
Yeah.
happened and the journey we've been on. I thought, what are you talking about? You've not convinced me of this at all. That's the.
And see that's where I'm different because there are certain characters in that movie that reminded me of my own life and
Mm,
relationship that I've had. So I mean, I'm probably just looking way too close to them because they hit real close. So a lot of the stuff with David Harbour's Red Guardian, that dude reminded me so much of my dad that constantly talking about his glory days and about how it was all ruined by having to watch kids. And I was like, oh, okay. Thanks for cutting out speeches from my dad, making it, Sheriff Hopper, who I love, saying these things.
I do.
Um,
I want to be clear though. As much as I'm going to critique a lot
mhm,
of things when we get into the spoilers here,
yeah,
it's not like terrible. That's kind of when
no,
I say it's a middle of the road kind of bland movie. It really is. It feels off the Marvel assembly line, and I know some people are going
okay.
to hate that statement, but it does.
So off of ones of these that were not phase one but felt phase one, just off the top of my head,
Mm-hmm.
you have Widow, you have Captain Marvel, and you have Doctor Strange, right?
I'd maybe throw an Ant
I
Man as well if you.
throw an Ant Man, yeah. I would I'd probably put Ant Man above because I really love that movie. Um, and then I'd put this right under Ant Man over the Doc Strange and Captain Marvel. And I enjoy Captain Marvel, but I feel someone pointed out, I forget who it was on Twitter, that they felt for them that Black Widow was the inverse Captain Marvel in that in the moment, Captain Marvel was like, oh my God, this is so fun, this is working. But the more you thought about it, the more it didn't work for you. Whereas with Black Widow, I felt like in the moment I was questioning a lot of these things. But the more that I think about certain aspects, the more I like the movie. So I thought that was a pretty astute observation.
Mm. I'll just also throw in here, and there was no way of getting around this, but there's kind of
Mm-hmm.
this almost gimmicky feeling to when you end a movie that's like set before, and you have to do the scene that ties it up to where it's going in the next movie. So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, she's got the platinum hair from Infinity War. And it even plays the Avengers theme as she's going off to meet the Avengers. Kind of like
I didn't.
it rolled
I
my
didn't
eyes
hate
a bit.
that.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
I didn't hate
It's a
that.
bit.
I also love Solo is my favorite Star Wars movie.
Oh,
That was very Solo-esque. So I'm not,
yeah, I
I
hate that shit.
understand it not working though, because even my wife was like, did we have to see her with the blonde hair? Right here. Did we have to see her with the Quinjet?
It's just
So,
it's one of those things where it feels kind of tacky and forced and whatever. Anyway, so let's get into this
yeah.
the meat of this. Let's get into the spoilers and talk about the
Mhm.
going ons. Um. So yeah, let's talk about. Well, we started kind of with Dracov in a lot of ways, so let's kind of get into that stuff.
Mhm.
And I'll say that I actually like the scene that I'll refer to as the Weinstein scene because
Mhm.
that's very much what it was. It's Black Widow finally gets to confront him, and he's playing the I'm in charge. All these girls are disposable. Is very much meant to be alluding to that,
Okay.
and I actually thought that was quite a powerful scene because she kind of like encourages him to punch her, and she's got a reason for doing so. But the fact that she keeps
Yes.
getting back up and smirking at him and sort of encouraging him to punch her again
Mhm.
and takes the hits, but keeps getting back up. And then you add
Yeah.
on to that the callback to Avengers when he finally kind of reveals a piece of information, and then she says, "Thank
Yep.
you for your cooperation." So I actually think that scene on its own is actually a pretty well
Yeah.
done scene.
It, it is Natasha in a nutshell. You know, like I feel like that was her getting to. For me, that was Scarlett's last hurrah as the character. So yeah, I'm glad you saw the Weinstein parallels too, because that was where my brain went to.
I,
Uh,
I mean, not to
there,
say anything mean about Ray Winston here, but like,
yeah,
he's got a similar kind of shape.
he's
He's
dumpy and
yeah, he fills that
kind of icky
role.
here.
Yes, he fills that
Yeah,
role.
so we get when she tries to attack him back, right? I thought the pheromone control was a weird device.
It was just so that she couldn't beat him up immediately. It was just a plot
Yeah.
device. That's all it
Now
was.
there's other ways to do that. And again, I'm not a screenwriter, you know, but I do watch a lot of movies. That there could be deep down conditioning that just does not allow her to lay a hand on him. But the pheromones just felt like from a bad Bond movie,
Mm-hmm.
like
I mean, even I mean,
yeah,
we needed a scene where Natasha watches a James Bond movie on her laptop.
yeah. And I think was it Moonraker? Connor would know,
I don't know. I don't know
He's
those
he's the Bond
movies.
fan out of us, but yeah, it's one of the Roger Moore ones, so I might not even be naming that. But it felt like the pheromone control. But I did like the resolution of her knowing that, and that's why she's having him beat
Yeah,
ever living crap out of her.
and the joke of I say joke. I mean, it's kind of a joke, but
Yeah,
it's kind of a witty kind of
yeah,
like when she's like, "You couldn't even do it properly, so I'm going to have to finish myself," and she has
uh-huh.
to headbutt the table to because what
Yeah.
she's trying to do is break her nose so that she can't smell the
She can't
pheromones.
smell the
Yeah.
the pheromones,
So
and
it,
then she's free to attack back and whatnot. But yeah, that whole thing with the pheromone controls and the widows is there's such stark implications there that he can do whatever he wants to them and they can't fight back, and it's just it made me feel icky,
I
and so
I really wish that the widows weren't all a bunch of extras. Like
hmm
I really because they make this thing where okay, there's thousands of widows all over the planet,
hmm
all in operatives. Then there's all the girls that are training here.
hmm
The fact that the Red Room's like a flying fortress made me roll my eyes a little bit because it didn't really feel
big
like
time.
because. And again, I'm not saying that they couldn't have upgraded at some point, but like
Right.
whenever we got glimpses of the Red Room and like Age of Ultron and the flashbacks or whatever, it felt like it was in a mansion somewhere.
Right.
Not
It was like a ballet studio. That's how I
yeah.
always took it. It was this unassuming place where bad things happen.
It was one of those
Um,
things where, like, as soon as I saw it, I kind of like rolled my eyes. Not because I hate the concept of them having a flying
mhm.
red room, but because I knew that we're getting to the third act, and this thing was probably going to be exploding as it
and
falls out the sky, and I'm sick of
yeah,
seeing that at this point.
yeah, and I know just something like that. The fact there's never a mention about it in any other Marvel thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like you feel like that would have been a thing in the background, in maybe Spider-Man or something along those lines, you know. Um, but what are you gonna do? That's not something I'm willing to pick a nit at. As
Yeah,
much
I
as
mean,
the
yeah, I mean, the big problem here is the lack of reasons and motivation to like
Mhm,
actually go through the steps. You know, because Yelena in you know,
mhm.
I was going to say Scarlet. Natasha comes to I think it's Budapest because of
Uh-huh.
the package she got in the mail of the vials.
Right,
Because Yelena just happened to get broken free of the spell because someone broke.
right,
This is like this breaks their mind control basically,
right.
and she runs into Yelena. They have a fight which felt a little bit forced to me. It felt a little bit like we want to do the start of Kill Bill. We want to have that, but it's not real. You know, it's not a real fight to the death, and then they're going to be okay with each other, kind of thing.
Yeah, I did like that though, because it gets to show, because we all know how much of a badass Natasha is. So getting to see Yelena show off, and they end up in a stalemate.
Yeah,
I did like that.
I wasn't really feeling this fight scene all that much. I mean, there was some good moments to it, but for me, when Yelena started clicking was when it calmed down afterwards, and we got the more kind of the humorous chemistry, you know, such as Yelena making fun of the pose and saying, "Why do you always
Uh-huh.
pose?" And she starts
The
doing
poser.
the you know the head
You,
tilted
you,
back, the hand up behind
you
her.
flip your head back, and it just yeah, it was so good. And Florence Pugh, I've yet to see anything that she's not been good in. She's just one of those actresses that nails it on every front.
She's one of these actors who just kind of exploded onto the scene
Hmm.
in the last couple of years. I saw her in a TV pilot. It was a British
Hmm.
miniseries, which I wasn't really into, but she was in that, and then she was also in Fighting with My Family, and she was in like a
Hmm.
crappy horror movie. She was fine in it, but it was a really crappy movie called Malevolent. Um,
Okay.
and it was obviously the year after that where she was in like Midsummer, and it was like, oh, all of it,
Hmm.
and then she was announced to be in the Black Widow movie. It was all of a sudden she started being like, you know, like she's clearly a star
Yeah.
now. She's going to be in all these different
Nah.
things. Um, and being a Marvel movie just means, yeah, okay, that's her. She's on the
Yeah.
map now. Everyone's going to know who she is.
Yes.
Um,
And no, and I thought she was very good because she is so different also from Scarlett's portrayal of Natasha, who I feel like there's a little bit of awkwardness with Yelena that, yeah, she's just as much of a badass, but she doesn't know what to do with her hands, whereas there's a little bit of confidence missing that Natasha just exudes, and so I feel like that dynamic worked with them.
yeah, like I say, I just wish that because the scene where they're just sitting having a beer and they basically say, I
Mhm.
guess we're going to go after the bad guy then and take down the Red Drums. Yeah, I guess we are, and
Yeah.
that's just like that's not how movies work. The characters have to like
No.
need to do this. They have to like be
Yeah.
motivated and
Yeah.
be like, ugh.
I mean, yeah, to draw the parallels with Winter Soldier, Steve had nothing else to do, right? Like
Yeah.
Hydra has infiltrated Shield, and he has to go on the run because they're gonna kill him. And like Natasha's already on the run from the government. That's how the movie kicks off. Not after the ambulance scene.
Yeah, we see
You
William
know, sh-
Hart back as
yeah, it's
General Ross. Yeah,
Thunderbolt, and so she's on the run there. And then we meet her kind of fixer or her fence, whatever he is. um, and I half expected like the widows to come for her, for whatever
mm.
reason. Like, the government's hired one of and that's how we get involved. But for it just to be like, hey, you want to go do this thing? Yeah, sure, why not?
It's so laid back, like,
Yeah,
and it never gets to the point. Obviously, they tease this idea that Natasha has this guilt because to get to, because she thought she'd killed him ages ago
right.
with bombs, and she thought she also killed Dreykov's daughter in the blast, right? And it tries
Mhm.
to play off a little bit of that guilt, that guilty conscience, the red on the ledger kind
I
of
read
thing,
it in her
right?
ledger. Yeah.
Right, which is a phrase they do bring up again in this movie.
Hmm.
Um, and I felt like what should have happened is as soon as she believed that he was still doing this to other women, like she should have immediately been like head focused, like, okay, no, this is now my goal in life. I don't care about anything else. I don't care if I ever see the Avengers again. I'm going to take down this guy.
Hmm.
This is a personal thing. This guy was my captor. This guy brainwashed me. He was in control of my entire childhood. They didn't have a real child. They wanted to stay in Idaho, wherever they were, in that opening.
Oh, they were in Ohio.
Ohio. I knew it was one of the old ones,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, Midwest America. It was very, very idyllic. And they're in the
So yeah,
90s. So
some of those opening shots of them like in slow motion riding their bikes and just having a happy child were some of the best looking shots in the movie.
yeah.
Look at
And
film.
also now that we're in spoilers, and I feel straight spoilers for Stranger Things, but basically this is a sequel to Stranger Things, right?
I mean, no.
Yeah, I mean,
No, I get the joke you're making here.
Hopper
I
ends
no,
up
no,
in.
I get the joke you're making. That's not good.
Yeah,
That's literally the end of the most recent season. Let's not spoil. Let's not
I'm
spoil
just
that.
saying. Uh,
I get what you're
but
saying. I've got a good
yeah, so
feeling though that Hopper's story is going to course correct next season, but
we'll see if he ends up in a Russian prison.
I mean,
I will say he's very. There's a piece to him that I can't help but not like, just because it is Sheriff Hopper. And then I remembered him in Hellboy, and I was like, oh yeah, that was a thing. But I thought he was good with what he was given here to play Red Guardian.
he's definitely. I think he gets some good stuff with the two, quote unquote daughters, right? Where
Yeah,
there's that moment where he kind of like is kind of proud of them, so he kind of shakes their arms, kind of in a weird,
yeah,
awkward way, and then hugs them. And the way they both kind of look at him, like, "What the hell are you doing?"
yeah,
Is kind of interesting. Um, I didn't necessarily get the sort of earned kind of like, because Rachel Weisz's character, who's the mother, right, the fake
yeah.
mother,
Mm-hmm.
is that I never really quite bought her connection to them all that much. So when they do the
Yeah.
twisteroo where she swapped places with Scarlett or
Mm-hmm.
Natasha, with the fancy, Mission Impossible
Which,
style face
which we
masks.
which we knew kind of was coming back, because that's been a move of Widows and Winter Soldier.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
And when it's this.
I
I didn't even think of that connection, man. That's another good one.
yeah. Well, that's what made me think. I was like, this is doing Winter Soldier, but not as good.
No,
So,
what got me
yeah.
was when they revealed that Taskmaster was like, Thingy's brainwashed daughter, who's played by an actress who I know, Olga Kurylenko, has been in a bunch of things. Yeah.
Yeah.
When they revealed her, I just went, "This is Winter Soldier. This is Bucky.
Mm-hmm.
They're all Buckies.
Yeah.
They're all Buckies now."
Which, here's the other thing too, is the Winter Soldier in the comics is a Russian asset. However, in the MCU they make him a Hydra asset, which I understand. Yes. But here it made it seem like Russia was also at war with Hydra. And so it just, in my head, for comic continuity stuff,
it's murky.
It really made a mess of things.
It's a little murky because it's like, were they at war with Hydra? Were they in line with Hydra?
Right.
I don't know.
and so, but like you said before the spoiler wall, like there are things that they could have done to Taskmaster, tweaks that, like, yes, this is the new Winter Soldier. It's called Taskmaster, and it was set up in case Bucky had ever went rogue or whatever. And it would have been fine.
Or even on Natasha's like reaction to this, if she actually referenced Bucky, if she like sort of recognized this as her own kind of version of Bucky and addressed it that way, as if, okay, whereas she doesn't, and it kind of feels like it makes us feel like the writers also want us to forget that you've kind of already done this before, rather than saying, oh, we've encountered this kind of thing before, she has an idea of how to approach this and use that experience to help her. It would have felt more rewarding that way. But it's just something that's like, all the ideas in this, there's nothing wrong with any of the core ideas, other than maybe some of them are a bit too rehashy, but the problem is they just don't go all in any of them. So I never really feel the drive for it.
Right, and even Taskmaster, it's kind of hard to say. I wanted more of. Like, you outside of that first fight scene, and then at the end of the movie, kind of just disappears. Like,
well, she's in the car chase, which, I mean, to be fair, the car chase is not bad.
No,
I'm sure a lot of it was CG, but it did feel like a lot of stunt work was being done. I'm not sure. I'm sure if I watched it in like slow mo and like tried to pinpoint, I could, but it had a good feeling to it, as opposed to, because there's actually, see towards the end of the movie when they're all jumping off this, and there's a couple of like jets with some parachutes or whatever. There's a moment where they're both our two main characters, Natasha and Yelena, are like running to get to a thing, and they make a point of blowing up Dreykov's chopper or whatever. But there's a moment where Natasha yells to Yelena when Yelena's already in like a jet with a bunch of like the widows, and it's the most like awkwardly badly green screened like shot in the whole movie. Like, Natasha's head just does not match the background at all in terms of like composition and lighting, and I just kind of felt like, like this. I mean, there's some good effects, and it's not like the movie's like full of bad effects. Like, I thought the avalanche looked fine and stuff, but there's just this moment where I'm like, this is the problem with this compared to that car chase from earlier. And one of the things that could separate this movie from the other Marvel movies. And I said this about the first Captain America when it came out, and I was shocked at how bad some of the green screen was in that, and that was like a decade ago. Is that so many of these movies are dealing with, spaceships and aliens and like end of the world cataclysmic things that you kind of wish that these characters who are a bit more hand-to-hand combat, who are more grounded, should have more grounded like climaxes. And it's kind of a shame that they don't take that opportunity, because ultimately this just felt like another big CG mess at the end, where there's a lot of like stuff falling down, and she's flying through the sky trying to like grab Yelena because she's been hit, and she's like falling separately, and she's trying to get to her in time to open the parachute. And it's a fun idea, but it's like,
dial it down. Executed as great as they could have.
Dial it back a bit. Dial it back. Because I think the most exhilarating pieces of action in this whole movie were not... Because even though the avalanche looked alright, and it was kind of a funny set piece because of Yelena's commentary, like, the most exciting action in this were the more realistic... And I say realistic, obviously there was some physics going on for fun's sake, but for compared to the rest of the movie, the more grounded car chase, and it was the hand-to-hand combat. It was when Taskmaster would like find a way to stab Natasha when they were fighting on the bridge. That felt like a fun little beat in a hand-to-hand combat scene.
Yeah.
It should have like really veered more towards that, I think, for the action.
Yeah, I agree. Like more kind of, we say in comic street level kind of stuff, and it just didn't. Because even, not to fawn over Winter Soldier, I do feel like, and I like that first Cap movie. I know you don't, but yeah. But compared to that one, they are so different. Is that Winter Soldier is a lot more gritty and visceral, and you feel like the Russo brothers shot it, traditionally on sets, and it's tactile. I mean, there's some green screeny stuff throughout, but like not like here, not like anything from the Red Room or any of that. So I definitely get your vibe there, because to me, that's a political thriller, a little bit different than a spy movie, but there's still some spy movie elements to it. This kind of gets into, again, bad James Bond spy movie, not the kind I enjoy.
It's like the pacing's not necessarily bad, but it has that kind of weird thing where the script's not really driving it to each big set piece, because when it became time to like, oh, we have to go get someone who might know where the Red Room is. Oh, we'll go get our fake dad at a Russian prison.
Yeah.
Like, it just kind of feel like, oh, it's time for this next big set piece where they're going to break him out, rather than, it'd have been nice if, like, I don't know, they felt, at least one of them, if they felt nervous about seeing them again, because it's going to be awkward, because, the last time they saw him was this time when they were split up, and they actually, because they were kids, actually felt kind of like it was kind of real. They believed in the idea, because they were children, they couldn't, especially the younger, Yelena, if anything, the fact that Yelena's just as, like, cold, and she's funny, don't get me wrong, her describing that she has no periods when he says, well, is it the time of your month, when he's like, why are you being moody, and she goes, we don't have periods, they take that away from us. Then she starts describing like in detail all the things that they go and do. That was kind of funny, don't get me wrong, but and her delivery of that was great, but it kind of like, you would sell me on this moment more if at least the younger one, who it would have been the most real to when she was a kid, actually felt like she was reacting to seeing him again in some way. And it kind of felt like it was just a little bit limp for me, where everything feels at arm's length. Everything just kind of feels like they're not wanting to like commit too much to the characters really going into these emotions or ideas. And again, you do get that scene where she breaks down crying singing American Pie, right?
Yeah.
You do. And the performances from Pearl Harbor in that scene are great. I just I don't think the rest of it really lives up to that, and as a result, I didn't really buy the turn where the parents both want to help them as much as they do, especially the mom, Rachel Weisz, because she doesn't really get that much.
Yeah, that one was almost like, because she was retired from the widow program, but she was still working for them off-site on certain things, and it almost felt like, well, if you were retired from them and you had such issues, how come it took Natasha and Yelena coming to you before you're gonna flip on them?
Yeah.
That's why it almost would have been nice for her to reveal that she's the one that sent the gas out, or she was the one that is responsible for freeing Yelena from it. Because her machination.
Because it's just like an ex-widow who's went rogue, who is trying to free everyone and just happens to get into a fight with Yelena because they're hunting her, and breaks Yelena free, and it's just like, and this is the thing, like she sent the vials to Natasha. And I honestly wasn't even really sure if Yelena sent them to Natasha because she wanted Natasha to come and help, or she just wanted Natasha to go and use them and like save the day. Like, did Yelena still want to be involved? Did she still want to be a part of like taking them down? It was unclear, and because the way she
Right.
fights Natasha when Natasha shows up, it's not like she doesn't recognize her. She knows who she is.
No.
I mean,
Right.
even if they'd not seen each other in such a long time, Natasha's famous. She's an Avenger. She knows who
She
she
saved
is.
New York,
Yeah.
right? She's part of. I mean, she's internationally wanted for the Sokovia Accords. Like she
Mm.
knows who she is,
Yeah.
you know, and that's why I almost wish that had tied in somehow a little bit more than her just being on the run. Like the widow's being after her, so that's why Yelena's able to track her so quick.
I
You
think
know, something like that.
Florence Pugh is the best part of the movie, and it's not
Mhm.
that Scarlett's bad in the movie by any means. It's just that her character, because she's just leading to her death, it doesn't really
Yeah,
feel like they bothered
she
trying that hard with her.
she almost has to be the straight man in
Yeah.
this because everyone else has a quirk, but her quirk is that she doesn't really have any. You know,
Yeah,
because like
because Yelena saying she bought her vest, she's so proud of this vest because of all the pockets. Like that was a funny scene on its own. Like she was very
yeah,
delightful in that scene.
I could put all my stuff in there.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it was. She's so good. I can't get over Florence Pugh in this movie. Just
I hope
you
they
know,
don't like have her like, because with Scarlet Witch they had her lose the accent
mhm.
like very quickly. I hope they don't do that with her.
Yeah, I love Elizabeth Olsen, but I think sometimes she doesn't know what accent she's doing as Wanda because it's been all over the place. So that was just easier for her just to go with none. Um, but yeah, no, I think they got to keep it soft, you know, because as this international spy, she should be able to drop in and out, you know, more so than Wanda ever did, you
But
know.
I do genuinely think the accent. I mean that scene where she's like making fun of the pose. Like I think the
Yeah,
accent added to that comedy. Like
yeah,
when she was sort of saying,
yeah,
"Why do you do this? You put your hand." Yeah, like the
uh-huh,
way she, because the
yeah,
accent added to the
mhm,
silliness of it. So it
mhm,
kind of worked.
yeah,
Uh,
definitely,
so yeah, I mean, big action climax. The parents decide to help them. Saving the girls basically just amounts to, oh, all those vials, I attached them to a smoke grenade so they will explode in front of everyone and they all just magically turn.
yeah. That's again, that's where, and also they're free to keep wanting to be widows, right? Like,
I mean, technically, if they want to.
yeah, like so, and now they free Taskmaster, who only has one kind of role, right? And it's almost like, well, now they could just go work for bad guys, which actually would be kind of cool because if you know about the Taskmaster origin, that's what Taskmaster does. Is in the comics, it's a guy who has photogenic memory and can, you know, watch all the heroes and learn their moves, and then trains the henchmen that go and work for the bigger henchmen.
Yeah. Do you know, it was a bit weird actually. Like, I thought they were going to try and tell us that Taskmaster had fought Captain America at some point because there was so
Yeah.
much of Taskmaster using a shield like Captain
Hmm.
America early on. I thought,
Yeah.
and then they said, oh, he can copy any fighting styles of like anyone
Right.
he fights. I thought, oh, does that mean that he's fought Cap? Because at this point I
Right.
didn't know it was the daughter, as I'm thinking.
Right.
So he's fought Cap, then is what you're saying, and then
Right.
it never like even alluded to the idea that maybe
No.
Taskmaster fought Captain America at some point.
No.
Uh,
And there's a lot of people that get upset with Marvel for changing things, but I feel here it still works. That as long as Taskmaster still can mimic anybody, and that's
mhm.
what makes it hard. Because like playing the Spider-Man game, those were the least favorite parts of that, were the Taskmaster stuff, you know, and it's very frustrating. And so I feel this character could be very frustrating, and it doesn't matter who's behind the mask; they're still getting the spirit of the character down,
Yeah, I don't care about
you
the
know.
changes. It's not
No,
something.
it's not a big deal. I mean, but that's my de facto with most of the changes to Marvel. Like there's a lot of talk about the upcoming show, I'm sure we'll touch on, and about how they're gonna do that based off of a certain comic run. I'm like, there's ways to change it to make it fit the MCU. Like not everything has to be a complete direct adaptation.
The only
Y-
thing I ask of the Hawkeye TV show
mhm,
is that it's at least one little group
okay.
of guys in tracksuits who keep saying bro.
Yes.
That's all I
Bro.
need. I need.
Yeah,
That's all I need.
definitely. And it lends itself to, I mean, Kate, as long as Kate acts like Kate, that's all I need. You know?
Yeah,
Like,
pretty much. I mean, honestly, the biggest when I talk about this movie like an afterthought, the post credit scene,
mm,
which is of course is set in present day, and it's Shelena going to Black
I,
Widow's grave.
I under the tree with the pink flowers, which you know her
Is it,
mom
yeah, it was a reference. Yeah.
was to that, and I just it got a little weepy
I mean,
for me.
I wasn't feeling anything, but sure,
Yeah,
I'm happy you felt things. So,
yeah,
but Juliette Lewis-Dreyfus's character from
Uh-huh.
Falcon and Winter Soldier showed up, right?
The Contessa.
Elaine showed up,
Yeah.
and and is basically like, hey, you know, and it sounds like they already know each other. This is not like a first time recruitment. Like she's clearly been working with her already. And says, "Hey, I thought you'd like to know like who's responsible for your sister's death," and hands her a tablet, and it's a picture of Hawkeye. And I have to admit, I really got annoyed at this because
Oh no.
this is why I'm annoyed. If we have to go more than like one scene of her thinking Hawkeye like is responsible for Natasha's death, I'm going to be pissed. Because I do not want that plot thread. I do not want that to be the fundamental thing that starts that show is that Yelena thinks Hawkeye killed Black Widow and she's going to try and kill him for it. Like, get over that as quickly as possible, please.
Yeah, I hope it's him explaining and breaking down that, because having just watched Endgame on TV last night because it was on, the amount of guilt that he has about that it should have been him, and like that's not just something that they're going to be able to graze over. So just get it out of the way. And I mean, really, I know it's called Hawkeye. But I don't even really need Renner because now I'll have Florence Pugh and Haley Steinfeld and just have them bounce off of each other.
Yeah, I mean,
that's where I'm at.
I just don't want the entire show because I've not been super fond of these last two shows. I think they've got a lot of problems that are they're very poorly underwritten. I think the last couple of Marvel shows and Disney Plus. And I really like starting this off with the sort of plot thread that would be on a CW show is not something that excites me. Which is she thinks he's responsible for her death, so she's going to try and kill him.
No, it's MCU Riverdale, and I hate you for that. I hate you for that.
So
what if it just starts with her killing him, and everything that we've seen is just a
that would be
herring.
ballsy. Like honestly,
Right?
Marvel doing something risque like that would be would be refreshing.
Yeah.
I would be delighted.
I don't see it happening.
Yeah.
I see her shooting first and wounding him, or whatever. But
I just hope it's like I hope she's already like researched them enough that she's already got her doubts, and it's not like she goes in there just like believing this.
Well, to me, I mean, 5 years has passed from the movie to present day, right? And so what was Yelena up to that has led her to the Contessa? Because we've only seen her interact with.
I have to assume
U.S. agent.
I think there's an easy assumption here that Yelena and possibly the mother and father as well all dusted, and just because it makes it neater for why like Black because Black Widow's whole thing was like you've got a family, so I have to be the one who dies. Like I'm not letting you kill yourself, kind of thing. Right. That's kind of weird if she's just regained. I mean, I didn't really buy it at the end of this movie, but just for the sake, the movie's saying that she's like feels like she's got a family now, right?
Right.
But so the movie's saying that to me. It's kind of murky if in Endgame but you do have a family. You do have a family.
Well, I mean, Red Skull on Vormir does say call her by her father's name, as almost like which would have been nice if it was. Damn, they bungled that. They could have used David Harbour's character's name, Alexei.
Plus, it works better because if they all dusted, then it's also like she's sacrificing herself to save all of them, which adds an extra little wrinkle to that.
Right.
So that would be fine.
Well, damn, now that shoots down her just doing freelance work, and that's how she comes across Contessa. Although who knows?
I mean, maybe she's. I mean, I'm just guessing that. I mean, maybe she wasn't.
No,
dusted.
I know, but it makes a lot of sense. That's why she sacrificed herself, because she has no one, outside of Steve. Really, I mean, that's always been one of the weaker parts of the MCU for me is the Hulk and Black Widow whole thing. Like it works in a couple of the movies, but not so much in others. And so like she kind of just had Steve. So yeah, if she does have a family there, that makes that a little bit different. Huh.
It's just a bit murkier, just a bit in the murkier side. I think one of the things I tweeted out after I watched this is that a big part of the MCU that isn't as effective as it used to be because we're kind of used to it now is the idea that they're always building to something, and that this movie might suffer because it's set in the past, because it's set in between two previous movies. It doesn't inherently have that building to something feeling, other than Florence Pugh being the one to stick around and do other things potentially. So, and when you take that away. And because I think this movie is kind of bland and it is just kind of like a by the numbers movie otherwise, it kind of lands in this very middling place that I just think is like, it's fine. I'm not mad that I watched it, by any means,
Yeah.
but I'm just like I don't really have any rush to ever see it again. Um, but the one thing it is kind of hinting towards with that post credit scene, in addition to what's been going on in the other Disney Plus shows, is well, clearly we're setting up some either Dark Avengers or
Mhm.
Thunderbolts or possibly even Young Avengers versus Dark Avengers is the next big like movie that might
Yeah.
be built to. Um, because we're going
Yeah.
to have Elena, Kate, but I mean Elena could be an Isla team to be honest, but
Really? I mean,
yeah,
yeah. I mean, if they're doing Dark Avengers though, you need that Black Widow to counter, and
yeah.
maybe they're going after that. I don't know. Like I know they want to take Clint out, but do they want their own Hawkeye? And is that how Kate factors in? I don't
Well,
know.
that's what I'm saying. Like, if you're doing that's why I'm
Yeah.
saying it maybe Young Avengers versus Dark Avengers
Right. Right.
because we're setting up Kate Bishop soon. We're setting up Miss Marvel soon, who's also going to
Mm-hmm.
be in the next Captain Marvel movie. It's I
Mm-hmm.
mean it's titled sort of
Marvelous.
equally between all the Marvel characters,
Yeah.
and then we're setting up. I believe Abomination's coming back in one of the Disney Plus
Yeah.
shows, so
And
that's for
She-Hulk.
for Dark Avengers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um.
Also, apparently he shows up in the Shang-Chi trailer.
Oh, really? So there you
So
go.
yeah, he's in the fighting ring. So if he's there, I mean, cool.
So it does feel like they're building a roster of the young
Mhm.
and the kind of anti-hero or villainous, because obviously we
Yeah.
have U.S. Agent from
Yeah.
Falcon and Winter Soldier.
John Walker. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But we also have characters from Young Avengers also kind of assembling. So, it's they're there.
Maybe maybe
I mean,
maybe
they're
these maybe these two things are separate. Maybe there's going to be a Young Avengers
yeah.
thing and a Dark Avengers
Well,
thing. But
yeah, don't forget Secret Invasion is in the works too with the
that's true.
Skrulls.
That is true.
So, um, maybe the Contessa's is a Skrull. I mean, I don't know.
Possibly.
But
But
yeah.
it's clear Contessa's kind of being the more villainous version of Nick Fury to start off
Sure,
Phase
yeah.
4.
Well,
That's kind of what it feels like.
that's what it felt like to me watching that post credit. Is it felt like when Fury showed up because I kept seeing, and I know you commented on this too. Like the movie hadn't even been out for 12 hours yet, and people are talking about what does the post credit mean, and
Yeah.
had that got spoiled for me because I was not expecting Contessa to show up in Black Widow. So in the post credit, so that surprise there, it felt really nice, and it felt like seeing Sam Jackson show up as Nick Fury in the post credit of Iron Man.
You know what I'll say? Because I tweeted out that obviously we've been having these Disney Plus shows that watching
Mm-hmm.
this, nothing really felt all that movie about it for the most
Mm-hmm.
part. It just kind of felt like, and I think part of that's just because Marvel movies in general have felt like they've not been that
Episodic.
stylized. Well, not even
Yeah.
just that. I'm talking about how they look. Like Avengers, as much as I loved
Mm-hmm.
that first Avengers, it just looks like a TV
Mhm.
show with a big budget. It doesn't look like a movie,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, well,
And
that's why something like Guardians or Ragnarok stand out so much because they don't.
a little bit, yeah. But
Yeah.
what I want to say though is that while I say that, I am actually very glad that this is a movie and not a Disney Plus show because I've felt with Loki and I felt with Falcon and Winter Soldier. Not so much WandaVision, a little bit different because it's got a kind of
Mhm.
a gimmick to it. But those two, I
Yeah.
have felt like they should be 2 hour movies, but they've been stretched out to 6 episodes, and I feel that pacing stretched
I
out.
agree with you on Falcon and Winter Soldier. That one definitely could have had a second edit. That a 2 hour movie would have made that work so much better.
I think there's a lot of stuff in the middle of that show you could cut out, and
Yeah.
you'd end up liking it. I mean, the villain would still suck again, but
Yeah.
at the very least, it wouldn't be as much of a problem in a 2 hour movie that it would be in a almost 6 hour
Yeah.
miniseries.
Loki, I disagree with you with just because it feels like Booster Gold, the TV show. And since I'll probably never get a Booster Gold, the TV show, I'm going to enjoy it for all its sports.
I would never say never,
Yeah.
Matty. I don't know about that.
I don't trust them. I keep getting ads for Titans on HBO Max, and it just makes me mad.
Again, you can stop pairing it to DC stuff. This is
No,
irrelevant.
I'm not. I'm just saying when I say it feels like Booster Gold, it's got the time elements, it's got the differing things, it's got the kind of roguish hero that you shouldn't be rooting for.
Yeah, it's got the
you are.
concepts, but the concepts aren't enough. It has to also be well paced. It has to have momentum. It has to justify why characters are doing certain things at various times. It can't rush through all of its ideas in the space of 40 minutes. There's a lot of reasons why I think that show is not very good, and it's not the core ideas. The core ideas are not enough.
Gotcha.
Just like having characters dressed as Superman and Batman are not enough to call it a Superman and Batman movie, right? Same principle. The same goddamn
I,
principle.
I get it, but I'm not as invested into Loki, so I'm just watching, watching them go through stuff, and I like what Hiddleston's doing, so and I like Sylvie, um, so I just and it helps that I'm not as invested. I'm sure if I was a huge Loki fan, there might be stuff that I have more problems with.
Well, I'm not talking about Loki being accurate. When I said the same principle, I didn't mean like the characterization being right. Like that
Mhm.
part's different. What I mean
Right.
is that just having these things that you can tick the box and say we have this
Mhm.
element isn't
Right.
enough. You actually have to sell me on the element. You have to build to
No,
it. You
no,
have to pay it off.
I
You
get
have
what you're
to.
saying.
But basically,
Yeah.
I'm saying it has to also be well written. That's
Yeah.
fundamentally. If you want
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
bubble it all down to one statement, I want
Yeah.
it to be well written.
I get you.
Anyway, as this whole Black Widow is
Mhm.
it's perfectly watchable, but very bland. It's very in the middle. It is, it's nothing special. It's pretty forgettable, and unfortunately, I kind of like don't get much excitement for most of these upcoming movies that we've got. I'm hoping one of them surprises me, but
Yeah.
right now I don't
I'm
really feel much excitement for Shang-Chi or Eternals. I'm just kind of like, eh.
Yeah, I'm very excited for Shang-Chi just because the whole kung fu element and the fight element and Simu Liu. I haven't seen him in anything, so it feels fresh and
It's what
new.
it's worth mentioning
So
that I felt very similar, and then was very pleasantly surprised by the first Spider-Man because I was really down in the
yeah,
MCU in
yeah, you were
2016, getting into 2017, and that Spider-Man movie kind of was a nice pleasant surprise to me. So
yeah.
I'm kind of waiting for that again, and nothing coming out soon feels like I want to love Hawkeye because of who's involved,
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
I was looking forward to some of these other Disney Plus shows, and I've been kind of just like
Hmm.
on them. So
Yeah. Yeah, Falcon and Winter Soldier outside of certain parts really made me sad just because I wanted that to be so good. And coming off of WandaVision, which I mostly enjoyed. But you said that had that gimmick there that kind of
it had a good gimmick.
glossed over some
I
things,
do think the
you know.
ending floundered. I think
Hmm.
it being a big fight at the end, and I also think what
Yeah.
was one of the parts of casting turned out to just be stunt casting rather than actually meaning anything was really disappointing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah, and the people that are trying to take ownership of that, like, Marvel can make mistakes. Like that's gonna happen. Like, not everything they do is great. You know.
the problem is that the MCU, like I said earlier, a big part of the MCU early on was the idea of the build, and it was like building to the
Hmm.
Avengers teaming up, and it was building to Thanos coming and the fight against
Right.
Thanos, and now we're building to new things. I think the problem with modern TV for Marvel, if it is compared to their Disney Plus shows, is
Hmm.
that modern TV is very intricate, and one of the things that people love to do, fan bases love to do with shows, and that didn't start with Lost, but Lost was a big
Hmm.
example of it, and then it's become a thing in other modern TV shows, is that week to week speculation and looking for Easter eggs and trying to piece the puzzle
Hmm.
together is a big part of that. And that naturally goes hand in hand with the MCU because the MCU is very much been about teasing what's to come and planting these seeds for future things. The problem is that for all three shows thus far, those first two especially, is the fan theories and the way the fans were like building these really interesting potential narratives out of the seeds that were being planted.
Yeah.
Everything in the show ended up being so simple by comparison that it felt lackluster. It was like this show is not thinking
Yeah.
in the fourth dimension the way that the audience is trying
That you
to.
want it to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The whole Mephisto thing and I was guilty of it. I started looking up like the significance of storks in mythology and whatnot after an episode of WandaVision.
The
So
most recent example of this being
yeah.
really well done and successful and an excellent TV show was Mr. Robot. And that show was constantly either being what you thought and rewarding you for guessing where it was going, or it was doing something different that was equally complex and it was making you reconsider things, and like it felt like it was like encouraging you to like keep up with it and in a really healthy way. And so by comparison, people try to do the Mr. Robot thing with these
Yeah.
MCU shows has led to nothing but disappointment for anyone who was doing it. And, it's a shame.
Yeah.
Especially when you're dealing with a character like Wanda and like what that show
Hmm.
was, and you're dealing with maybe not so much Falcon and Winter Soldier, but you're dealing with character like Loki, you're dealing with all this time. But anyway, we're going off topic here. We're talking about
Yeah,
Disney
yeah,
Plus
yeah.
shows, but
But yeah.
Black Widow's just okay. That's my stance. Matt, do you want to rate Black Widow?
Yeah. I'm gonna give it a 7.5 because I did enjoy my time, my journey back to the MCU. And a lot of those family dynamics did work for me. But again, I think I'm putting a lot of my own personal stuff in there. So upon you talking about some of them and thinking about it, going like, oh yeah, that moment kind of was missing. I was putting too much of me in there. So, but I still enjoyed it. Like there's still a lot of stuff there that I like.
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie. I was a little bored by sections of the film because the plot never really got to a point that was that engaging. So much of it just felt coincidental. So some of the struggles the characters went through felt too easy. Being captured by this evil man who has all these women indoctrinated. It felt like, oh no, they had a plan and it was really easy to get out of. It didn't feel like it was challenging all that much. It felt a bit, everything just felt a bit too simple, which is a shame because I kind of like the tying it into the Me Too movement, and I like actually try to have some of those parallels. It felt like, it was the one part of the movie that it felt like it had something to say, because for most of it, it just kind of felt like we have to have a Marvel movie, so let's go through the motions of said Marvel movie. So with all that in mind, I'm going to hit it with a 5.5. It's I said it was middling, and I'll say it's slightly above that halfway mark, just because at least there's some likable things in it. But that's about it.
Yeah, for viewers of our comic show, I rating movies is different for me than rating comics. So, my 7.5 here actually.
Yes. Yes.
On that scale.
Well, I mean, to defend Matt a little bit, even though I was giving him shit for comparing things to DC, the reason why he might feel inclined to do that is because we're on a DC Comics podcast called Comics from the Multiverse, where every week we talk about the DC comics we read that week. So you can go check that out on the Comics from the Multiverse YouTube channel, or find it on your podcast app of choice. But I will take this time to thank our Patreon producers for the month. So thank you to Tyler Hess, Cindy Palacios, David Short, Bornow, Al Treisman, Christopher Moy, David Brown, and Stanley. Stanley.
Excelsior!
So you can, of course, support us on patreon.com/MailFuzzTV for as little as $1 per month and get some bonuses for your trouble. Obviously, one of the higher tiers is the producer tier, as everyone I just thanked there. You can also support the show and everything we do by hitting the like button, subscribing, dinging the bell for the YouTube notifications, especially now that we're on MailFuzz Movies separate, and this is kind of building up its own separate audience now from the TV stuff. So please do hit those buttons. And I will also now get Matt to pose for the thumbnail, which is something he doesn't have to do too often, but he's done it today. So here we go.
I probably shouldn't do the pose, but
the only rule, Matt, is your head can't be cut off the top.
And
your arms can't go out of the sides of the frame either. So.
I get it.
Right, why are you getting taller? This is worse.
There you go.
Slouch.
I know. Okay.
Slouch. Your hair's
good?
Yours cut off.
Okay.
Slouch a bit more.
The one time I don't want to slouch.
I know. What the hell is this, Matt? Come on. Look at you on the overlay. You can see your hair.
I see it now.
Yes.
But yeah. I need a good pose. Give me something, Pete.
I don't know. This is your job.
So just 2 thumbs?
No, because your arms going off the edges, Matt. You can't have your arms get off the edges. I mean, that kind of works, I guess.
Is that good?
Usually I count down, but I'll use that. That's fine. You've done it.
Okay. There you go.
Such a drama. Just getting Matt to pose.
It is. Hey, I've been up since 4 a.m. I did a gym. I did a whole day at work. Went to the gym. And it's been a day. My brain is mush.
I like the idea of Matt trying to do the Black Widow pose, though. You'd have to go quite far back to pull it off.
I did it at work today.
Sure.
me and my coworker were talking about the movie. So. Let's just say I don't have anything on Scarlet nor Florence.
Yes.
So, I'm not as flexible.
Mm-hmm.
That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I mean, hopefully Matt tends to step in for these big comic book movies, so next time you'll probably see Matt here talking about a movie is probably going to be, well, probably Suicide Squad actually. That's probably before any other Marvel movies. So
yeah, we're less than a month out.
yeah. So we'll be talking about the Suicide Squad in about a month's time. So
Yep.
look forward to that, and then whatever comes afterwards. But it's not too long after that before we hit Shang-Chi, because Shang-Chi's like September. Then Eternals is November, I think. So
November.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's a quick succession once we get rolling. So I look forward to that. So let's say check out the Comics Podcast, check out the other content, check out the Sci-Fi Podcast, the Atomic Cinema Experiment, check out the Horror Movie Show, Streams After Midnight, and check out MailFuzz TV for TV episode reviews of various things. If you want to hear me be very negative on Loki, at least episode 3 onwards, you can go check out that. I don't know if I recommend it though. Maybe it's a bit too negative for you. But that is us. So thank you once again for joining us. It is with pleasure. We'll see you next time. Keep watching movies, and if you can get it, it's always nice to have diplomatic immunity.